last year when it was name your price, or earlier in the year where it was, they would name whatever price they wanted, and then we would have to tell the customer, this is what you're going to have to pay, or, or you're not going to move your freight. It's not like that anymore. We're seeing a lot more competition from our carriers, and, the strong relationships are really proving to come through for us right now.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Freight Caviar Podcast. Today's guest is Marshall Nebeker, the president at Shore Logistics, based out of Long Beach, California. Thanks, Marshall, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Totally. You reached out to me a few weeks ago because there was some crazy incident involving some shady players in the space that took advantage of your MC, or I guess kind of stole your business identity. And I think you reached out to me then, you told me the story. I was quite shocked to hear what you told me, and I think it's an interesting story. So I definitely want to talk about that story, how you resolved it. So if anyone has had any issues here with having their MC stolen, or I guess identity fraud for a business, right, this could be an educational podcast for you to learn from. But yeah, Marshall runs a freight brokerage out of Long Beach, California. What's the market like these days, Marshall?
Well, we're seeing, obviously it's not like it was last year. We're seeing kind of flat growth, but what we're really seeing is carrier prices dropping significantly, which is, last year when it was name your price, or earlier in the year where it was, they would name whatever price they wanted, and then we would have to tell the customer, this is what you're going to have to pay, or, or you're not going to move your freight. It's not like that anymore. We're seeing a lot more competition from our carriers, and, the strong relationships are really proving to come through for us right now.
Sure. And what kind of drastic changes have you seen in terms of, like, obviously there's the pricing market has completely dropped. There's not that much freight on the market. But in terms of, like, last year, there was a strong peak season. This year, it's essentially non-existent. What have you seen in terms of, like, the pricing? Like, if you could, maybe tell us, like, the percentages decreased in terms of GP. What have you seen from the freight brokerage side?
We're seeing steady profit percentage over, since last year. I mean, it's pretty much the same, but what we're seeing is, like you said, the peak season, last year was an entire year of peak season. And then, September, October, November, or August, September, October, usually in the Long Beach area, LA market with freight forwarders is, a peak. You just see with the Chinese New Year, everything before the Chinese New Year is crazy. Tons of ships, etc. And 120 ships last year at this time is down to, 20% of that. And the ports are completely changing, where, everything's going to New Jersey now, which just kind of shifted the whole market for everybody. So you gotta, obviously it's, the market shifted, but you also have to now extend your carrier base, because now the carriers have changed. So
sure. And you're right in the heart of it, being in Long Beach, California. Yeah. So how's that like? Obviously you've noticed a decrease in the amount of ships. I spent some time in Long Beach in April, and there was still a ton of ships back then.
Right.
What does it look
Well,
like now?
the stuff like last, up even halfway through this year, you'd get calls in for, hey, can you, help me with drayage? Like now the drayage carriers are calling us out. It completely shifted. The customers couldn't get drayage. The drayage carriers were turning customers away. And now it's completely shifted where the carriers are looking for freight. Well, they're looking for customers, and the customers have all these drayage carriers that can move loads for them, move their cans out of the port. So that's like the one of the big like eye openers, right? So that's specific to this market. I'm not sure how, New Jersey or Alabama are right now with that, but in this market, drayage carriers are at like 20% of what they were doing last year.
That's tough. So like, I mean, obviously a lot of companies will go out of business, trucking company wise, with the overhead and all that. I did read this week that New York and New Jersey ports have surpassed LA for the second month in a row in terms of TEU numbers. Like, so that's been a significant change. Definitely New York, New Jersey have overtaken the market, which is interesting to see. I'm wondering if you have any perspectives on what next year will bring. What are your thoughts on how the market will be in Q1 of 2023 and moving forward?
Well, we use a sonar tool by FreightWaves. It's, been a kind of a game changer for us. So they're watching all of that all the time. So we were actually able to see that. I think last month it actually jumped a little bit. It went up, but I mean, for the most part, most of our freight is spot market. So we're not like a huge, we're a 10-person operation. So we deal mostly with spot market freight. And, right now it seems like it's increasing, but I have really no crystal ball as to what 2023 is going to look like. Obviously, if you stock market or whatever you're trying to gauge the future on, it doesn't necessarily look good, but our customer base are the SMB, the small and medium-sized businesses. And the greatest thing about being small is that you can just make more sales calls and go after, the guys that don't necessarily get called on by the big guys. So that's kind of our saving grace, and like kind of lets us write our own destiny. If we, let's say, the market kind of tanks, we can still change our destiny by going and making more sales calls. That's how I've always kind of preached it. And it's always been, kind of fortuitous is like that, because like you can make the change that you need,
Yeah, definitely. It's easier to control a smaller operation and kind of attack than, the large companies are the ones that are really going to hurt because they don't have it's difficult.
And they're all contracted. I mean, a lot of the stuff is like contracted. So, what are they going to do? Yeah. It's like, and you have all these guys that like, let's say Target, for example, when everything was crazy at the beginning and end of last year, beginning part of this year, where they were just getting inventory. Now they have all this inventory. So like, they're not looking for rates, right? Like it's completely changed. Now it's kind of, they're trying to sell their inventory, which is a complete flip from last year and the beginning of the year,
Totally. Yeah, it's definitely been a lot different. But to be honest, I'm not surprised by all this. Even at like those all-time highs, I knew that there's going to be the lows, and I don't think it's that even low right now. I think that it's going to go a little bit lower.
Still really busy, but it's not the name your price anymore.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You don't post something from LA to New Jersey for $7,000 anymore, and then get beat by another carrier because they got a load for 10 grand. Like,
Sure.
on a Friday, we used to see freight get posted on a Friday and it would jump 25% because the carriers would just wait until Friday when they knew people had to move their stuff. And then it would just jump, the rate would jump like astronomical. We saw someone get paid for LA to New Jersey during the madness last year. A carrier got 13 grand from a huge 3PL. And it's like, okay. And the carrier dropped and was like, we had to go with this because this is crazy. And we were like, more power to you.
Sure.
You
How much
cannot
not. I was just wondering how much were you like getting paid from the customer at that point from like SMB companies? How much were they paying for like an LA to New Jersey at the peak?
I forget. I'd have to look at the
Sure.
details,
It
but
was probably somewhere like around 7-8K though, I could imagine. And then someone's taking a
but I mean,
13K.
it wasn't bad for us because more revenue just means more profit,
Yeah.
And the carriers were passing that cost on to us, and then we were just passing it on to the customer, because we have to fight them all day for it,
Yeah.
and we have to deal with the risk of a carrier dropping because they find this crazy rate from a huge 3PL. It's like,
Sure.
and we're managing the expectations the whole time, and it made for a crazy time.
Totally. Really crazy time. And then you have a really crazy story from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about what happened a few weeks ago?
Not at all. So, everybody's familiar with double brokering. It happens all the time. Half the carriers you get called on nowadays are double brokers. It's a part of the business, right? So, we, about 3 months ago, got a call from a carrier trying to verify a load, and the load was completely bogus. And, I was like, well, send me the paperwork because I'm interested to see what this looks like. And they sent us a fake rate con and a fake carrier setup packet that said our name on it. And but it came from a Gmail account. And I said, that's not one of our loads. And the carrier is basically like, well, what am I supposed to do? And it's, well, that's not our load. I don't know what to tell you. And that tripped off kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And, we were in this position where I think we got 2 more calls, and it was like, okay, this is serious, like this, we have someone that's impersonating us, dispatching loads all over the US, getting carriers to pick up loads, jumping in between the broker and the carrier, pretending to be a carrier, and then pretending to be us, brokering the load to another carrier. And then essentially they were not paying the carrier at the end and getting paid by the original broker, and the carrier's getting screwed. So it was kind of like one of those things where you don't really know what to do because there's no handbook for it really.
Sure.
So, I was luckily able to lean on our relationship with that and start the process of, we were luckily able to find some of the loads that were posted and talk to the original broker. But then as soon as you say, oh, there's someone impersonating us, they get fishy, right? They don't want to deal with it. So we had to go to that and say, that there's someone impersonating us. And they were able to, shut down a lot of accounts that were double brokering. But that only gets you so far. So you got to then find, they could just make a new account or call on trucks in the area. So it was really a cat and mouse game. And, we contacted the FBI, but that's worse than the DMV. And then we contacted, they said to contact the local police. That's not going to get anywhere. You tell a cop what a freight broker is, they don't even know. So, we contacted the Department of the DOT and the FMCSA and got in touch with the inspector general, and she kind of knew what to do. And was really helpful in kind of communicating to some of the carriers, like, look, you were the victim of fraud. Like, you know, you should probably do a little more due diligence in the future. But for the most effective thing was really reaching out to the factoring companies and telling them, look, you're going to see a lot of loads maybe get delivered and the rate cons are not ours. The carrier setup packet's not ours. Those are fraud. And then just kind of, you know, we let the factoring companies know, we let the DOT know, and then eventually we got Google to shut down a lot of their accounts because they were using Gmail. And that, I think, proved to be the most efficient way of getting them shut down.
So just to retract, the story was essentially, it was double brokering. It was a double broker who stole your identity and presented,
correct,
who presented essentially fraudulent rate cons to trucking companies, and they were selling these loads probably for absurd rates. If I'm not mistaken, they're probably paying
right.
over.
You're probably gonna, of course,
over the market because they weren't planning on paying that out anyway. So they're just like,
correct.
Yeah. So these carriers get fished onto it. So essentially, if you're a trucking company listening to this, then do due diligence on everyone you work with. If someone's using a Gmail account and they're a brokerage, just probably best not to use them because most freight brokerages have their own email accounts. Always, you know, do due diligence. That's something that freight brokers
call on the load.
Call
on the load. If there's a number in the rate con and you call it and it's not real, you're done. You know, that should be a dead giveaway. If you Google our company and then call the phone number listed and nobody answers, don't do the load anyway, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is a lot of these, you know, a lot of the calls we got were from foreign drivers that didn't really understand what was going on.
Sure.
You know, they got totally taken advantage of. And, you know, at the end of the day, the driver's like, well, what do I do? And it's like, well, you can, you know, obviously in the future, make calls or like you said, do the due diligence, but you got to go after the shipper. And one of the things that kind of stuck out that made it obvious kind of what the scam is. So they're on the fake rate con, it says send the signed BOL once you pick up, because they're getting that signed BOL and submitting it to the original broker to get a fuel advance. So a lot of times they're getting 50% of the load fuel advance, and then they just move on. They just never even follow up. They're gone, right? Because they get the fuel advance. So if like someone said, like, we would never, I don't think we've ever said that, you know, send me the BOL, the picked up, you know, the picture of the BOL once you pick up. I mean, that's pointless unless the load's delivered and it's a POD.
So
you know?
I've done that before. When I opened up a freight brokerage, I had zero credit and no one wanted to take my loads. And so I would offer them, because I had no credit, they didn't trust me. I had no history. These trucking companies didn't trust me. And so I offered them like, hey, listen, if you send me a signed BOL at the pickup and then also send me a photo of the trailer loaded, I'll send you 50%, because that was the only way for me to sell my load. And that was
right.
So like, I get that thing. And that's why I think some people do that just because of that. But and like the moral of your story is, first of all, if you're a trucking company, do compliance. But if you're a freight brokerage, you got to be also on the lookout to make sure that your carrier packet's not in the wrong hands. That that's, if someone might contact you and essentially be like, I took a load for you, but it's like not in your system because someone just stole your identity, your business identity.
And the number one thing to do is to let the factoring companies know, because I mean, they do the most due diligence. You know, they're kind of like a auditing system, if you would. You know, they add a layer of compliance that most trucking companies don't have.
Sure.
So you let the factoring first, they're probably going to get that shut down quicker, if that makes sense.
Totally. So, Marshall, if you were to say, like, what are a few things that you would do, like right now, since you've gone through it, you have the knowledge now, the wisdom of going through it. Like, so number one is let the factoring companies know. What are a few other bits of advice that you'd give to someone that
Definitely contact the email service provider with the paperwork that's fraudulent, and show them that someone on their email platform is impersonating your business. They'll try to get that email shut down. Let the DOT know, and then let the factoring companies know. That's the number one thing. And then obviously communicate that to your whole team. I don't know, how many people are in your office, but let everybody on your team know to take a, look into paperwork a little bit more, so that you don't end up paying one of these bills.
Yeah. No, definitely. And this goes for the brokers that are selling most of double brokers as well, because they're the ones that start the whole, I guess, machine of it. They give the rate count to a double broker, and then the double broker fraudulently takes someone else's MC to resell it. So definitely a lot to learn from this. I appreciate.
Obviously, search on DAT and see if you can find the load, and then call the original broker too. That's
sure.
But like I said, a lot of times it's cat and mouse. So you got to start wide, and a lot of that's shutting down, the email, letting the factoring companies know, and then obviously letting the DOT know.
So you, Marshall, you contacted Gmail, right?
Correct.
Okay, you contacted Gmail to get rid of that email.
And just basically I got the carrier to send me the email chain that the person was impersonating us. And then I submitted that to Gmail and said, you have somebody impersonating my business on your email platform. And then they shut down the email account.
Sure. Smart. I would have never thought of that, but that's smart. So definitely a lot of lessons to learn here. Marshall, I appreciate you letting us know. I think that people should definitely be on the lookout. Trucking companies should be doing compliance. That's a great way to eliminate risk, is to have a factoring company. And then if you're a broker that had your identity stolen by a double broker, make sure to let the factoring companies know, contact the email service provider of whatever emails they're using, and then also inform the DOT. So those are three things, three takeaways.
Yeah, it's the inspector general at the DOT office, because the FMCSA transfers you to the DOT, and you have to get the DOT inspector general.
Got it.
Which is a whole nother thing. They were outsourcing their call center, so it was hard to get anybody, right? But you just have to continue to push.
Sure.
That's my only advice there.
And in the last few weeks, since you've taken all those initial steps, you haven't had any issues or problems. So
no, we haven't seen it come up.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Marshall. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
And if there's anyone that would want to reach out to you, Marshall, what's a great way to contact you, just in case they want to know more?
You can email me, marshall@shipwithshore.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. And
yeah, thanks, Paul.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.